So, really pleased to be here and spend some time with you today. I'm going to talk a little bit today about Blue Zones Project and how the Blue Zones Project interlaces with tobacco use in the county of Jefferson. And maybe I better go back just a little bit to make sure that everybody understands the concept of Blue Zone. Back in around 2005, National Geographic magazine commissioned a man by the name of Dan Buettner, and his job was to go around the world and take a look at all communities where longevity was being displayed. That's an area where people were living to be over 100 years of age. So they found 5 different places around the world, and in each of these places, what they did is they asked the elderly, what's the reason that you would attribute to your longevity? Why do you live to be over 100 years of age? And they compiled a list. They also had a bunch of scientists with them, and the scientists kind of wandered around and did their thing. And what they found is that there were some other characteristics going on. So they put all of these characteristics together for each of the communities, and then they started to take, like Okinawa in Japan and Sardinia in Italy, and they overlapped these two lists. And they said, how many of these are common? What is the common between Sardinia and Okinawa? And then they took another list, Loma Linda, California, and put that over the top. And each one of them, each listing, each layering, they were able to refine that list to find out what are the essential components that led to longevity, not only in each of these individual communities, but the commonality between all of these around these 5 places in the world. So that was good enough. That was published. It was called the Blue Zones Project, and it was kind of just sitting there. Dan Buettner then wrote a book about it, started popularizing the idea. And then about 4 years ago, they said, what would happen if we took these essential Power 9, they call them, these 9 principles, what if we took these principles and went into a community and got people to try out these behaviors, making some small behavioral shifts in their world. So away they went. They started. They tried it up in Minnesota first, and in this community they went in, and actually within a year's period, they got astonishing results. They actually changed people's behavior. Then they went into California and to there are several communities that are the beach communities, they call them, right in Los Angeles. Hermosa Beach is one of them, Venice Beach. And they tried the same thing there, but in a big scale, and that's still going on. Meanwhile, the governor of Iowa said, it's time for us to move Iowa from the 19th healthiest state in the nation to number 1. And not only that, I want to do it in a 5-year period. That's about 2 years ago. So his objective was to create a healthy Iowa. And what they decided to do is to have a public and private marriage. Public in the sense that it was publicly endorsed, meant that the government endorsed this program, but the funding for it would come out of the private sector. In fact, the first companies that were involved with were Hy-Vee and Wellmark were the 2 big companies, and then Wellmark has been picking it up very actively ever since, with a lot of support from Hy-Vee. And these corporate funding allowed the introduction of these Blue Zones concepts into communities across Iowa. So a number of communities have been selected as Blue Zone communities. There are big cities over 10,000 and the smaller communities, which Fairfield is one, that are under 10,000. And a small city, large city, applied. If they met the criteria, they were accepted as a candidate. And Iowa, or Fairfield now, is a candidate to become a Blue Zone. So right now, our different components of our community, such as our work sites, places where people work, they're going through a long list of possible actions that they can do with their employees to help reduce the burden of the healthcare costs and improve the health of the people in the work site. The policy people are involved, so that our city government is involved with a certain set of criteria for them. Our school system, our general public. So each one of the components in our community are being challenged by trying to meet a listing of criteria, and each of these components don't have to do all of the checkoff list that's there, but they have to make so many points in each of the checkoff lists. And when they complete that, then they would be certified as a business, as a Blue Zone business. Fairfield has our first grocery store was certified, and that was Hy-Vee. Actually, our local Hy-Vee was the first large department or grocery store in the smaller cities that got certified. We also have one of our restaurants certified, the Seasons Garden, right in the Bunnell building, right down on the square. That is a certified Blue Zone restaurant. So each one of our establishments and our schools, etc., are all going out trying to meet the criteria, make the criteria, and when they do, then they get certified as Blue Zone, and enough of our components get certified, then the city gets certified. Now, why are we trying to get certified? Well, there's a number of reasons. One is, and the ultimate reason, is to improve the health of Jefferson County residents. There's some very serious issues in the county. For instance, most people don't realize that Jefferson County has the second highest binge drinking rate in the state of Iowa, with younger people that are not supposed to be drinking at all, underage drinking, but even our 21 to 35-year-old males have the second highest binge drinking in the state of Iowa. This is a major health concern, actually. It's just not, we can't just assume this as business as usual, because there are health implications to behavioral choices. Health implications to behavioral choices. And behavioral choices are just what we do, our habits, what we do from day to day. So Blue Zones is trying to make an impact in a lot of these areas. One of them is in the area of preventive health, ultimately. You see, back in 1980, in the United States, there was around $250 billion spent in healthcare back in 1980. By 2010, we were up to $2.5 trillion for healthcare. This is a massive cost, and what's happening is that the healthcare industry cannot absorb that kind of expenditure. As a person ages, their healthcare costs go up, and we have an aging population. So as that starts to go up, it comes right back to a business that has to be spending the money to pay for it. The other thing is that the people who are the highest risk cost the most in the system. And high-risk behavior, actually, there's many different kinds of high-risk behavior, but the one I want to talk about today is tobacco use in particular. You see, there's 2.5% of our people employed in a business, 2.5, spend 40% of the medical costs. So a very small portion of our people are where most of our cost is, and they are referred to as our high-risk people. Because we're trying to increase the wellness of our, like I said, our total population, and that means that when we're talking about wellness in this way, we're talking about emotional health. We're not just talking about physical health, and that's definitely part of it, but we're also talking emotional health, mental health, spiritual health, and what we would call environmental health, or the environment that we live in. And all of these 6 components or areas we have to address with any comprehensive wellness program, because oftentimes we'll think of something like Blue Zones, we think, oh, an exercise program. All this fellow wants is a little bit of exercise. No, wellness is much more comprehensive than that, even though exercise is a major component of it, because we have to address all of these components. You see, the individual company right now in Iowa in 2013, average employee is making around $17,000 a year. But yet within that, we're spending another $20,000 almost on health care. By the year 2020, which is only about 7 years away, it's likely estimated that we're going to be spending more on health care per employee than they're going to get in salary. It's going to cost the company something like $70,000 a year to employ a person because of health care. You see, wages are only increasing by what? And you know it better than me. Maybe 2% if you're lucky, and many of us aren't even getting 2%. Health care is increasing by 10%. There's a big spread between those two, and the healthcare industry is really having a serious impact on the bottom line of any company. Because what we got to do is go into these companies, into the work, all of these environments, into our schools, into our community of Fairfield, to try to create behavioral shift. Now, because if for instance, if you have a coworker, and the coworker is just interacting with you in their normal way, if the person is a smoker, it increases your likelihood of beginning smoking by 34%. So just being around smokers is actually a health hazard because the possibility of you becoming a smoker increases. Same thing. If your close friend is obese, and you've got a 57% increased possibility of you being obese just because of your company. It's like friends of a feather flock together. You know, it's like when you're around with people who are on a Friday night, say, what are we doing? And somebody says, let's go canoeing, and everybody else going, odd man out, canoeing. That's a weird thing to do. I want to go to a movie. A person that chooses passive behavior or active behavior, your friends that you choose, depending on the choices they make, it has an influence on you. So they're not even having to talk you into it. It's just the environment that you're living in. You see, if we take a look at of what people are dying from, there's a lot of people are dying actually from tobacco use. And I'd like to get onto that a little bit because tobacco comes in many different versions right now. About a year ago, we set out to try to change some behaviors in Fairfield and in Keokuk County on the use of nicotine products because a lot of the tobacco industry is under jeopardy right now. There's a lot of folks that are, in big tobacco in particular, are aware that the jig's up in some ways. Now because people are starting to wake up about tobacco, smoking in particular usage, and they're starting to cut back. Tobacco is starting to move away from the smoking industry into the nicotine industry, finding other ways of delivering nicotine, because it's nicotine in the cigarettes that's the addictive substance. Nicotine in itself has a carcinogenic effect. It causes cancer, just nicotine itself. But the other ingredients that are in tobacco smoke, and there are over 300 chemicals that are in there, when you look at that complex of chemicals, many, many, many of them are carcinogenic. They cause cancer. If you didn't inhale those, i.e. you had a nicotine product of some sort, then it's likely safer. Is it safe? No. Don't get it straight that nicotine is safe. It has carcinogenic effect. But at the same time, if you had a nicotine product that isn't a smoke delivery or being delivered through smoke, then it's a little bit more, it's less of a damaging effect on you. One of the things that are coming out now, we call them dissolvables. Thank heavens that at present they're not available in Jefferson County or in Keokuk County, because I did a survey earlier about 2 months ago of all of the convenience stores, and none of them are carrying these dissolvable products. These dissolvable products come in certain varieties. One of them is like a breath mint. It's about the shape of a Tic Tac, and it says, and they're heavily nicotine based. They also have a little spicy flavor, etc. But the big thing is that they are nicotine delivery. You'll put it in your mouth, you let it soak, and the body just sublingually or under the tongue or just in the mouth period, the nicotine is infused into the system. Better for you I hate the word to use better for you, but less harmful than tobacco smoke. But it is addictive and they're expensive, but less damaging than tobacco smoke. Each of these little breath mint shapes have about 3 times the amount of nicotine that a cigarette does. So they're very small, but they're very potent. One of the concerns that a lot of people in my field of wellness are concerned about, in particular, is that these look like candy. And if a young child sees them and starts eating these little Tic Tac candy, they can actually get a nicotine overdose and die from nicotine overdose. So that's one of the particular concerns. They also come in other forms like dissolvable strips. You just kind of rip off a little strip, throw it in your mouth, and again it dissolves, but the nicotine is in the system. Expensive, but not as expensive as tobacco smoking. Smoking of cigarettes likely costs an individual with a pack-a-day habit $2,400, $2,500 a year. $2,400 or $2,500 a year. That's a lot of money. I could do one very serious vacation with $2,500 a year. And I think most of you could also use that money in much more creative ways than letting it going up in a puff of smoke. We understand, and I understand completely, the addictive nature of the nicotine. Absolutely. It's a very, very difficult habit to break. But the cost of doing it over time, it's estimated that someplace close to $100,000 per person as a smoker. It's not the direct cigarette cost, but it's also the health cost. It costs most company over a lifetime likely about $6,000 a year in health care for a smoker over a non-smoker. There's an additional health care. Now, that's not in any one year, but if you start getting a person that develops emphysema, any kind of lung disease, cough, cancer, asthma, all of these things that are related to coronary heart disease, all tobacco related, or in particular smoke related, we've got to make sure that that $6,000 isn't coming out of our healthcare system, because $6,000 per person for a choice that a person is making to smoking is very costly to the rest of us in the society, because it's not only the tobacco user that is paying that, but we as a healthcare system are paying that. Let me just switch to just a second. Here's a little can. This little can has some material in it. It's pretend. It's not actually tar, but this particular is the amount of tar that's deposited in the lungs with a pack-a-day habit in a year. So that a smoker who is coughing, what they're trying to do is get this substance, this type of substance, out of the lungs because it's sticky and it's tar-like. Well, it is tar. We call it tar. And that sticks to the membranes, and it cuts down the amount of diffusion of oxygen or carbon dioxide out of the lungs. So that's why a person who can't breathe very well is because their lungs are actually inside coated with this tar, and they start filling up with this stuff, and you just don't get the oxygen dissemination or the oxygen going into the body and the carbon dioxide being released from the body because of the tar. Very serious issue. If we cut back in tobacco use and smoking, you see, this is a little crib on the other side of my giant cigarette here, is some information. You see, within 20 minutes of stopping smoking, you get some health benefit. People think that, if I stop smoking, it's going to take me years to get my benefit. Within 20 minutes, you actually start to get the first bit, because your blood pressure drops back down. Not all the way, but you get an immediate drop in your blood pressure. Within 8 hours, the amount of carbon monoxide is actually will create death. If you breathe carbon monoxide, it actually will kill you. And when you're smoking, you ingest into the body carbon monoxide. Within 8 hours, the carbon monoxide starts to drop off. and blood oxygen levels, therefore, start to increase. Therefore, you start to have a little bit more energy. You're not quite as oxygen starved. Within 24 hours, it actually decreases your chance of having a heart attack. Within 48 hours, the nerve endings start to regrow at the end of your nerves so that you can feel better. And your ability to taste and smell starts to improve. Within 2 to 4 weeks, you get improved circulation, walking gets easier, lungs start to feel like they're working better. 1 to 9 months, a lot of your coughing and sinus problems that you're having start to get relieved. Within a year, you get a decrease in the risk of coronary heart disease, in other words, having a heart attack drop off. Within 5 years, the possibility of getting mouth cancer, throat, esophagus cancer starts to decrease, is cut in half, in fact. And with stroke, you get the same kind of a drop-off, about half the chances of dying of stroke. That's in 5 years. 10 years, risk of lung cancer is about half that of a smoker. You also get decreased risks for cancer of the bladder, cervix, and kidneys. And now, here's the news. Within 15 years of after stopping smoking, your risk of dying of coronary heart disease is about the same as that of somebody that's never started to smoke. So, now, that doesn't mean, I can smoke for 50, till whatever, and then as long as I stop, I'm going to recover. There is damage that gets created that's irreversible after some period of time, but much of it can be reversed. So the answer to you as an individual is the best time to stop smoking is now, because the longer you are smoke-free, the greater is the possibility of improving your health. Because we have to do preventive health for the very reason that I was talking earlier. We have to look at all components of our lives: physical activity, nutrition, the amount of sleep we're getting, the amount of water we're getting, all of these things in our lives, we have to be very careful of what we're doing. But at the same time, the body is very robust and it can adapt to a lot of challenges. But if you put too many challenges on your physiology, the possibility of something going wrong starts to increase. Tobacco's use is a major, major health concern. It's actually the second major health concern. But most people don't realize this, and it's not very well known across the country, that the greatest health risk is actually low cardiorespiratory fitness. Translation: we're out of shape. We don't walk enough. We don't move around enough. And people who are low in their activity patterns have it's twice the health concern as smoking. But we can do something about that. A little bit of physical activity each day will make a difference there. But then if we add cessation of smoking, even better. And like I said, tobacco is one thing. Nicotine is something that's on the horizon, and nicotine comes from people who are using chew, cigarillos. Anybody that's ingesting smoke or bringing in smoke, all are having the detrimental effects of the smoke. But it's also bringing in the nicotine. So these new nicotine products are also, these dissolvables, are also a major concern. So the bottom line for you right now is stop smoking, get active, make Fairfield a great Blue Zone community.